Mike, let me begin with what seems like maybe the biggest storyline today, and that's Vegas odds actually have Justin Herbert, with better odds to go as the second quarterback ahead of Tua. Make sense of this for me, Mike, how that quarterback shuffle there in the first 6 picks is going to go.
Well, listen, one of the things with Vegas, they sort of know a little bit
Yeah,
ahead
right?
of time. Now, I don't know how, but they do know a little bit ahead of time, and I think there are some people that are worried about the hip injury, and it probably financially affected Tua more than any other player in this draft class. I think you look at him, Grant Delpit, a few of the other guys, I think it dramatically has affected them. Now, I think it's a big mistake. I think it's a huge mistake to pick Herbert over Tua. I've said this before. To me, and watching Tua over the 3 years at Alabama, he's the most accurate passer I've seen in the SEC since Peyton Manning. And he's Drew Brees fool you. He looks one way and he throws the other. He fools you with his eyes. Man, I've seen Herbert make some silly mistakes. Remember at the end of the Auburn game, okay? They have an opportunity to maybe launch one downfield and get a shot in the end zone. He threw that son of a gun out completely. And I saw him do that 3 times at the end of a half. Just don't even give his receiver a chance. My thing is, God bless you. And I know you're a smart kid, and, I think a lot of him, but I'm not picking him over Tua. That's no way. But I get it now. I think the concerns and the conservatism that I think we're going to see throughout this draft about players with injuries, it is hitting Tua. But I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked, if he got out of the top 10. Now, boy, he's in no man's land if, he gets past 6. And then what happens? I think you're going to start to see teams start to scramble to try to trade up to get him if that scenario occurred. Now, I don't know if it will or not, because the draft is unpredictable on what happens. But I'll make one prediction. I bet one of the teams that try to move up to get him are the Las Vegas Raiders. John Gruden's never satisfied with any quarterback he's ever had. I think he could have had Tom Brady for the last 20 years. He would have been unsatisfied with Brady. So he's always looking for something else. And I think that they would be a team that would have an interest in Tua at that point. And looking for a team selling tickets, Jacksonville.
For sure.
Okay? Man, Tua. How many guys, the only thing you got to say is his first name. Tua.
Right.
And you know exactly who you're talking about. So, it's amazing to see that injury and him not being able to kind of go places and have their medical staff take a look at him, I think has affected him, and I think you're seeing it with the Las Vegas odds now where Herbert is in that position. And all I think I know is all this negativity toward Tua, Justin Herbert's team has worked double overtime. No, I always say is if there's a lot of negativity about a player, look around who benefits the most.
Right.
All this negative talk about Tua, who does it benefit?
Herbert, for
Justin
sure.
Herbert. That's nothing against Justin. He's not doing this, but he's got a team of guys that are earning that 3% and beyond.
Good point. Mike, there's this news isn't going to surprise you, but I'm curious your thought of the news. Diana Rossini tweeted that the Saints have called every team above them in the draft to explore options. Mike, we know, right? The Saints trade up. It's what they do. But she tweeted, I'm told while there are a few players they have their eyes on, they're open to moving up a few spots. Give me a scenario, Mike, where if there is a player or a position where you'd say if the Saints could go up, let's say, within a 5-spot range, maybe late teens, early 20s, what would be the position or the player that would be most realistic for them to be targeting there?
I would think that they would be looking at a specific offensive player, and it'd be at wide receiver. Would it be Henry Ruggs, the speedster from Alabama? On the flip side of that, on defense, I think it would be Kenneth Murray, the linebacker from Oklahoma, who fits more of what they've drafted in the past, linebacker-wise. A bigger, thicker player than Patrick Queen. I think there are teams that are looking to maneuver around. We all know Sean Payton is, man, he's aggressive. I mean, big time to get a certain player, and he's done this in the past. So that doesn't surprise me one bit. But I do think it would be for a specific individual, a specific receiver, a specific linebacker that would fit what he wanted to do. And we all know, that's what Sean's MO has been. Now, I've always felt a strong possibility is this team gets back into round 2 tomorrow. I just get a gut feeling. Nobody told me anything. Sean didn't text me anything else because I've been asked that. No, he didn't let me know. But I do remember certain things that he says about the draft. And he talked about the depth and that the more picks I could have in this draft, the better off I'd feel. And I think it's real thick at the wide receiver position. Interesting cornerback prospects. The interior offensive line. Isn't he telling you something there? It's like, I always tell you about, you got to listen to Coach O. He's not writing your script. He's not doing your show for you, but he is telling you.
Right.
He is basically sort of tipping you off on what he wants to do. And I do think that Sean has done that not once but twice and brought up the same scenarios and the same positions. Wide receiver, linebacker, interior offensive line. So, okay, cornerback. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what his mind is thinking at that point. And I've heard people say, well, Sean lies a lot. Sean has probably been more open to the press about giving you information than any other Saints head coach. I know in my time doing this, he didn't say anything, about it. Mora, he refused to talk about specific players. Mike would come in the day of the draft with the list of names on a piece of paper. Haslett and Mueller sort of worked as a team to do it. Every once in a while, Haslett would let the cat out the bag.
How did you not go Haslett, Mike? You got to go Haslett.
No, I'll tell you the story with Haslett. This was one draft, and he tells me, man, Mike, he said, man, are we good doing this? He said out of the top 75 players, man, we had like 72 guys, almost right down the order, exactly like it was. And I'm like, okay. So I asked one of the assistant coaches, I said, is that true? He's like, what did he tell you? So I repeated it to him, and he was like, oh, my goodness. He says, all I can tell you is, Mike, if we had 40 of the 75 players close, we were lucky. He said, it ain't even close. So he said, I don't know what Jim is trying to tell you, but in essence, he wasn't telling you the truth.
Yeah. Mike D's with us here for the full hour answering your questions. Here's one via Twitter. It says, Matt, ask Mike if he thinks either Queen or Murray will be there at 24 for the Saints. That's kind of the big question, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, I do not think Murray will be there at 24. I think you'd have to trade up to get him. If you stay at 24, man, listen, I've rode that Patrick Queen horse, for a couple of weeks. Why should I jump off now? I mean, I've rode that Queen position. And I do think if you stay at 24 and the 4 wide receivers are off the board, Queen would make all the sense in the world for you. And, again, he's a fit position guy. You don't have to take him off the field on the 3 downs. His ability to cover is outstanding. The fact that he's versatile is a big asset. Is he the big, thickly built linebacker that we've seen Sean, during the past? But what did Sean say in January? Fastest teams are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Fast. Look at what he brings to the table. So I've had a ton of people ask me, oh, Mike, I've listened to you on all these shows all over the country. I listened to you on Matt. I've read all your stuff. You keep saying Patrick Queen. Who are we going to pick today? Okay. Why am I going to jump off the horse? No, you got to be kidding me at this point. It ain't happening. And again, Bill Walsh told me this many years ago. He picked up the Pete Rozelle Award. And, man, I get to talk to Bill Walsh, who I think in the history of the NFL in the modern times goes down as one of the 3 best talent evaluators as a coach that's ever coached in this league. And so, I'm going to talk to Bill, and maybe, he's going to give me that key, to tell me about a player and what to look for and everything. And so we behind the stage and we start talking. I said, Bill, what's the key to your success? He said, Mike, and the draft? He said, draft's no more than an educated guess. I've always had that in the back of my mind. That was his deal. It's nothing more than an educated guess. We're just trying to find the right player for our team. He may not be the right the fit for the Falcons. He might not be the right fit for the Saints, the Cowboys, Giants, whatever. He's the right fit for us. And it doesn't matter to me where somebody else has him rated. It's where we have him rated. And I think that's what the draft's all about. It's not this cookie cutter that everybody thinks every player's the same on every board. And I've said this about mock drafts. And I don't do many of them during the year. It's not something that I care to do because I think it's futile. But it's like small talk reminiscing when you do mock drafts. Man, some people's lives are interesting. I mean, you like to hear it. Tell me a little bit about you. And some people have lived a lot more colorful lives than others. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't really matter, because we all sort of end up in the same spot. But it's interesting reading and listening to. And so I do look at it that way, that, these mock drafts, and it's fun to do. It is fun to talk about. But at the end of the day, when NFL teams do their board, because I've talked to a number of people throughout the years, they're like, man, we got 7 or 8 guys that are way off. We don't know what this team was thinking or that team, but I'm not saying nothing. Why should I criticize them? You know why? They might be right and we wrong.
Yeah. To the email inbox, Greg Lane says, Mike, would Clyde Edwards-Helaire be a perfect fit for the Patriots with how they like to use their backs? Any chance for him there?
Yeah. Now, again, man, I hate to say it where I got him going. I got him going to Tampa. Because I think about Brady, and he had Kevin Falk. Similar, little similar type player. But yeah, he would fit in any system, to be honest. His pass receiving skills are so good. He's a really good edge runner, but man, he's a tough guy between the tackles. He's ready-made for the pros because he can pass protect. I think that's a important feature, and I think he goes very early in round 2. Man, he goes to Tampa, I'll throw a fit. I told that to one of the reporters. Man, yeah, I mean, that's all they need today, is to have a guy like Clyde on that football team. But I think he would fit in any offense that he's thrown in. But, boy, as a guy as an outlet receiver, man, he is so good doing that.
Luis Hernandez on Twitter. Mike, this can be a one-word answer, by the way. Ask Mike, chances Saints end up with Tua?
I think it's low, really low. I don't think the Saints are going to draft a quarterback at all.
At any point in the draft?
At any point in the draft.
Okay.
I think that they're going to wait until the date is over with as far as compensatory picks is over with, which I think is either today or tomorrow. I think it's today. And I think they're going to go out and get a veteran quarterback. One of the reasons is I think probably they have already made a connection with somebody that, hey, listen, come here. Look what happened last year with Teddy. And he came in that 5-game stretch. Look how much money Bridgewater made in that 5 games, and he showcased his talents. You got that chance here also. And so I don't see them using a draft choice on a quarterback. It's an entire process. Now, I'm not saying they won't sign a veteran, a college free agent, but I don't see them using a draft choice on a college quarterback. I think they're going to go the veteran route.
Stay on Twitter. Daryl Dennis asked Mike if he sees Sully Lesh from Nicholls as a late-round draft pick or a free agent.
Sully is one of those guys that, he's contemplating if he wants to play again or not. Sully had a back issue, tremendous football player at Nicholls. And so I don't see him getting drafted. And he has sort of made indications that quite possibly his football career is over with. But was he a great player at Nicholls? But he did have a back injury that he had surgery on in the summer.
See if we can jump in the huddle here, get a couple of questions. Ask Mike, do the Cowboys trade Dak Prescott today?
No.
Okay. Ask Mike, this seems done as well. Is Burrow to the Dolphins completely off the table?
I think it's completely off the table. I've said this before, and when you deal with people of a certain age, and I got one, my mom's 89 years old, and she's kind of hit and miss. But even before, you couldn't get her to change her mind about nothing. I mean, once they had it in their head about something, that was it. You weren't going to change them. You got an 85-year-old owner in Mike Brown. You ain't changing his mind. Every time people have tried to call and ask about a trade, he has said, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. It's the same thing at the trade deadline. Everybody tries to hook Cincinnati in trading players. Mike Brown has never done that. In essence, he has told everyone, "I don't want to deal my players. I've got them. I don't want to deal them." Now, it's great to write on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and it's great to write a column. But if you look back to history, Brown doesn't do that. And I think if he would have done it, I think it would have been with the Dolphins. They had a lot of capital to piece together with an anxious owner who wanted Joe Burrow badly. And he basically said, not interested.
Here's one from Stephen Miller. Asked Mike, do you see Tua starting in the NFL in 2025?
Yes.
Okay. So I would assume that's just a durability question, if you think he'd be healthy.
Yeah. I get where he's coming from. And, listen, everybody gets injuries. Everybody has injuries, some worse than others. And I get it. I understand the hip part of it because of the lack of blood flow in that area. But, man, again, not everybody's the same. And I told you the story about Anthony Munoz. He came on with us a couple years back, and he told me that 9 teams that picked in the top 12 told him, "You flunked your physical. We're not going to pick you." He goes to Cincinnati.
Worked out okay.
He missed 2 games his entire career, and he's one of the greatest left tackles to ever play the game. So here's 9 medical staffs that flunked him, and look at what happened to him. So sometimes that doesn't work out, and sometimes you wonder. Look at Taysom Hill, great example. Taysom was hurt his entire college career.
Yes.
Every year he had an injury. Tell me the injury he's had with the Saints.
None. He's been durable. Yeah.
He had the little wrist thing late in the year one time, and he had a little surgery after the season, but it wasn't a major deal. And look at how they played him. Special teams, as the flex tight end, as the receiver. He was all over the board. Again, sometimes you just don't know about what you don't know, and it is certainly something to think about with the hip. I get it, but man, he's too good of a talent for me to pass up.
Ask Mike, do you think the Saints trade up for Henry Ruggs? This is a question via the huddle.
I think it would be a possibility. I wouldn't give it any odds because, again, I'm not in the head of Sean Payton. I don't know how he feels about Ruggs as a player. He certainly would seem to be a certain fit in this offense, and that he likes that guy that. A lot of Ruggs' catches, I think it's almost 50% of his grabs, were behind the line of scrimmage at Alabama.
Interesting.
And so they've used him a lot on these like bubble screen passes, throw it out in the flat. Henry take off. Now people say, well, he's not that strong. Bump and run him. Okay, you get one shot. Because if you miss, guess what? He's 30 yards downfield.
Yeah.
And you got no shot at him because he can outrun any corner. So I wonder a little bit about this negativity about Ruggs and where it's coming from, because now all of a sudden you didn't hear anything about Ruggs. Now all of a sudden now the last 48, 72 hours, you start to hear some of this. The agents are working that phone line pretty good about Ruggs. So
Mike, you've taught me well in this respect with how agents and people in certain players' corners who have something to gain, the work they do this late in the draft.
It's always who has the most to gain out of that. And so, that's a lot of teams in that top 21 that are looking for receivers, especially from like about 9 through 21. Man, and, you're going to see the big run on offensive tackles, and I think you're going to see that run on wide receivers also.
Let's jump on Facebook Live. Remember, we're streaming the show on the 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge Facebook page. You can watch the whole show live there. Get in the chat as well. Here's one from Cole Pierce. Ask Mike, how many LSU players go in round 1?
5.
So who's the one that's left out?
I hate to say it.
Help
and it would not be my decision, but I've heard a little bit too much about Grant and indecision on teams. And you know what? I get it. And it's done differently this year where you don't have that, maybe that strong SEC scout in your room to say, hey, wait, guys. Let me explain to you what happened to him. Because everybody's, watch the film. Watch the film of 2018 and tell me what type of player you get.
Right.
Okay, don't just fling me that, watch the film of 2019. Watch the film of 2018 and then tell me what you think. He's a first-round pick talent, but I think because of the injuries and his lack of being able to work out, and those little video stuff, I don't really know. I've had a couple NFL guys tell me we don't pay attention to that. Really don't. Don't pay much attention to it. It may push him out of the first round. I wish him well. I hope he goes in round one because I think he has been one of the star players on that LSU football team. And you know what, Matt? He could have easily said, you know what, man, I'm hurt. I ain't playing.
Yep. Same thing that Bosa did 2 years ago, Mike.
You know what? I'm putting it aside. I ain't doing it. I ain't playing. Look, Bosa, couple games. I put that on the shelf. I ain't playing. He ended up being the second pick in the draft.
Yep.
So last year at this time, if you'd asked most people, who's the highest drafted LSU player for 2020? Easily, Grant Delpit.
Yeah.
Easily, it would have been him across the board. So I think it's the 5. And I think the most underrated of the 5 is Christian Fulton. I'm just telling you, he's a guy that I've had a lot of buzz calls about, man. Because, for me it was clear-cut he was the number 3 corner in this draft. Clear-cut. For others, there was a lot of wishy-washy about Christian Fulton. Man, all I know is that he can cover man-to-man. He's got ball skills. He's a tough guy. He's got to get better as an open field tackler. I get that, but most corners do. But his man-to-man skills, his ability to find the football in flight, he does a really good job of it. And so, I think that he's being underrated, and you don't hear much about him. You know what that tells me? A lot of people like him.
They don't want the word out. You're right. 60 seconds. Mark Vitanovich here on Facebook. Mike, I heard the Saints like Southern Miss wide receiver Quez Watkins a lot. Mike, I'm looking at your book. You got him as the 25th best wide receiver on the board.
Yeah, I think he's a middle-round pick, great speed. Man, he can flat-out fly. He's going to need a little bit of work as a route runner, but he would be the type of guy that can, really blow the top off coverage. And if you watch Southern Miss, you know what? They did a lot like what Bama did with Ruggs, they did a lot with Quez. They threw him a lot of stuff like behind the line of scrimmage or right on the line of scrimmage and said, Quez, just take off. Well, good luck. You got one shot at him. He's rough around the edges as a route runner, but, boy, he's got speed, elusiveness, quickness in the open field. Boy, in this draft class, he's stuck right smack dab in the middle of the draft. Yeah. But I think he's going to end up being a really good player in the NFL.
Here's one from Shane via email. It said, Mike, what's the likelihood of the 3 quarterbacks going in the top 5 picks?
I think you have a highly likely scenario of 3 quarterbacks going in the top 6 picks. Okay, but my thing about it is, what if one falls out, and then you got Carolina and a Jacksonville? Are you really sold that your future is on Bridgewater? Your future is on Gardner Minshew?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to start thinking about that a little bit. And again, that's with this draft. The mystery of it is so intriguing about if one of those guys get out of there. And it would seem to be now the one guy likely to get out of there, or the most likely, I should say, would be Tua. And what would happen if you're Carolina or Jacksonville sitting there, and what type of offers you would get for Tua. I think teams are making a big mistake if he falls out of there. The same thing I feel as though Isaiah Simmons. I'll throw that out too. He's a unicorn, a football unicorn. And I heard one of the national guys say today, I question he wasn't playing one position. Okay, and you're the same jerk that talks about how smart people are. He played a slot cover corner, a free safety, strong safety, weak side linebacker, blitz guy. How smart do you think he is to play all that?
Yeah.
Man, he's really smart. Come on, you can't throw it one way and then throw it out the other. Well, he didn't have a defined position. No, he's a football unicorn. Man, here's my deal. If I'm a team like Atlanta or New Orleans, one of the things I would go after, I don't know how much it would take to get him. If I see him fall to 8 or 9, I'm like, I'm in. I want to get him of what he could do for my defense. And the other part about this, and you and I haven't talked about this, the Tom Brady effect in the NFC South. We have not, and you and I have not done this for that long, that we've had a guy make that big of an impact, hit this league, hit this NFC South. And what do you do to combat it if you're Atlanta or New Orleans or Carolina? Okay, you got to play football chess. It's easy to get in front of the microphone. Man, Tom Brady don't scare me. Okay, and then when you get back in, man, we got to do something to stop because we got to play him twice a year. So I wonder when we're going to look back next week on this. Look at those early picks for the teams in the NFC South and how they're trying to play football chess to get around Brady.
He's Mike Detillier on Twitter, at Mike Detillier. Here's one on Twitter from another Mike. It says, Mike, which teams that are early in round 2 would be looking to move back into round 1? Interesting, Mike. We see that with quarterbacks, right? Because you want the 5th year.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing that makes the end of the first round a more likely spot for a team to move up. I see Indianapolis at 34. If Justin Love would take the tumble at that point, would you make that maneuver? If Miami decides, I'm not going to take a quarterback, I'm going to go offensive line. They pick 39th in round 2. So you've got a couple of teams there that could piece something together if you start to see, and he's the biggest wild card of the bunch. I mean, we've talked about Herbert and Tua, but, man, the biggest wild card is Love because you talk to some people, they absolutely adore him, and man, I wouldn't touch him.
Yeah.
So it's divisive, and that normally means if a couple teams pass on him, then he's going to tumble. And does an NFL team say, you know what, at 29 or 30, let me make that move. To go out and get him. And even a San Francisco at 31, you think about it, they are gutted in the middle of the draft. They gave up a couple of middle-round picks for Emmanuel Sanders, and they're looking to trade back. Could you maneuver with them if Love fell to, say, 31, and you would have to give up, say, a second and a third-round pick? And that's what they want. That's what John Lynch wants. He wants to accumulate picks at that point. So I think that's where, and you're absolutely right, especially at quarterback, also offensive tackle. That's a spot where, man, you talk about you got to pay money, find yourself a top one and see how much cash you're going to have to shell out. Wait till the Saints got to pay Ryan Ramczyk, and see how much money that's going to be when they're going to have to pay him. So I do think offensive tackle and quarterback are the two things late in round 1 teams are willing to go get because, as you bring up, that 5th-year option.
Travis Valenti on our Facebook chat asked Mike, who do you have the Cowboys drafting?
Man, I got them picking. Hold on a second. I think it was.
It's Xavier McKinney. I'm looking at it right here.
Xavier McKinney.
In your last mock draft, yeah.
And I think he'd be a great fit for them. I think he is one of the more underrated players in this draft class. He played in 2019 like Delpit played in 2018. In essence, they moved him all over the board. He played free safety, strong safety, played in the slot. They played him a little bit more up front because of the fact, remember when Dylan Moses went down to the knee injury, that now you don't have that leader in the middle. So McKinney became that communicator. He's very good at it. He does a tremendous job of being able to communicate things to the other guys in the secondary. Nick Saban has really praised him at the highest level. The other guy to watch there would be K'Lavon Chaisson. I know the Cowboys have done a lot of work on Chaisson. There's a connection there, certainly with Stephen Jones and Coach O. Coach O coached him at Arkansas. So I do think that that's something to keep in mind, that I think those two players, depending on who's available, I think it'll end up either being Xavier McKinney or K'Lavon Chaisson. Tracy
asked, does Braden Fehoko get drafted?
I think he's got a shot late. He's a guy that's mostly, he's an interior player. He's not going to give you a great pass rush, but, boy, eats up a lot of space inside. His workouts have been really well. I mean, he's a good athlete. He has shown that he can push that inside pocket pretty well. And so he's got a shot. Now, again, I always tell people, if you don't get picked, sometimes you're better off.
Yep.
I can take a look at those 7 or 8 teams that are interested in me. Okay, which team has the least amount of defensive linemen? I can pick my spot there. I do think teams give draft choices a little extra because, their reputation's on the line. But for the player standpoint, you get a chance to pick where you want to go.
Lance Cortez asked Mike, where do you see Chase Fourcade going? Get a couple of Nicholls questions in here, Mike.
I don't know that Chase gets selected, but I know there's been a lot of work with him. The Los Angeles Chargers have probably shown the most interest in him. I know the Rams or another team. I was on the sidelines with a Rams scout for one of the Nicholls games, and we talked for quite some time. Actually, he called me about a week ago. And so I think Chase is getting an opportunity. I would love to see him get picked. I think he ends up being a priority free agent. But the team that has shown, the two teams that have shown him the most interesting, has been the two teams out west, the L.A. Chargers and the L.A. Rams.
All right, Mike, last one in this segment. E.J. Cambry asked Mike, if the Saints draft a wide receiver, does that mean Traquan Smith is done?
I don't know that he's done, but he's certainly on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Come on, they've given him every opportunity. Come on, Traquan, it's up to you now. They've given you every chance to be that player, and they want it to work out. It just hasn't happened, and you just got to find a way to get open downfield. It just has not happened for Traquan. For whatever reason or reasons, it has not worked out for him. But I think there is no doubt if you pick one in round 1 or round 3 or round 4, and I would not be surprised this team used multiple picks on receivers.
Interesting.
It's that good of a draft class at wideout. You come in the 6th round, you see a guy you've got ranked much, much higher. Say, you know what? I got a 33-year-old Emmanuel Sanders. Who knows what's going to happen if they're going to bring Ted Ginn Jr. back. I got a maybe in Humphreys, a maybe in Emmanuel Butler. I don't know what the hell I got in Traquan at this point. I got Michael Thomas, and, I got Sanders for this year. But, I got to look at that later in the draft, too. So it would not shock me to see this team use multiple picks on receivers. But I think that they're going to pick one receiver pretty high. And this is my feeling why, if they don't pick a receiver in round 1, I think Sean jumps right back into it in the 2nd round, some kind of way to get a receiver.
Mark Shelton on Twitter asked Mike, will Grant Delpit be a good fit with the Saints?
I think he would. I think he'd be an excellent fit in the way they use their safeties. And in essence, he's a hybrid player that could not necessarily have to play free or strong safety. Yes, he'd be a really good fit player for New Orleans. And I do know one thing. The relationship between Sean Payton and Ed Orgeron is really good. I mean, they got a really good working relationship. He coached on that staff with Payton. He has talked about Sean at the highest level. And I think he would believe, if Coach O comes to him and says, hey, listen, if you're thinking about picking Grant, I can tell you how good he is. And I'll never forget him making that comment about, I've never given more leeway to a player defensively than I have to Grant. And then he sort of peeled it back. He said, yeah, I did once before. Troy Polamalu when I had him at USC.
He was
That's pretty
good
damn
too.
good.
Ask Mike, will Sean Payton trade Alvin Kamara tonight?
No.
Fair enough. Ask Mike, if the Falcons trade up, who do they get?
I think that they would look to get C.J. Henderson, the cover cornerback from University of Florida. They need to shore up their secondary. But they would be a team looking to move up high enough. I think they're targeting Isaiah Simmons, too.
Ask Mike, sorry, I got to find my spot here. Ask Mike, how could LSU get the record for the most guys taken in the first round? That's from Charles. They'd have to get to 7.
Yeah, right.
I guess the 6 we talked about.
It would have to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Yeah, Clyde would have to slide in late to, say, a team like Kansas City. Who could he certainly, again, I've said this before, he would fit in any offense.
Mm-hmm.
But do they have a star back? They got a couple good ones, but they don't have a star.
It was amazing, Mike. Both teams in the Super Bowl had a complete lack of star power there.
It's unbelievable. It does go to show you the devaluation of the running back. And Andy's never used that first round pick on a running back. I've done some shows out in Kansas City, and and everybody's saying, well, what about DeAndre Swift or J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor? And you look back at history, and I'm not saying sometimes it doesn't bucket, because eventually, what's going to happen? Sean's going to trade back one year. Eventually. I didn't say this year, but eventually he will.
Not in my lifetime, man.
But almost like if you go to the racetrack and you look at the form of how a horse race, that's how he picks. I mean, he doesn't come off of form very often. He's got a trend, and he normally sticks to it.
Shelby asked Mike, do the Saints target an offensive tackle in this draft?
I think they address the offensive guard interior position. Sean has said it twice now. I like the talent in the interior part of this offensive line. And normally what you see is those guys have a little shelf life because there's a run on the tackles. I think there'll be a pretty hard run in the first and second round on wide receivers. The cover cornerbacks from, say, like 23 to like 40. There are going to be a number of them. There's a nice array of safeties. It may push that guard back. Even my number one guard, like Robert Hunt, I've got him going late in round 2. So you're going to be able to get some guard spots there, value picks in the middle part of this draft. But twice now, I've heard him say it, about interior offensive line. So I think he started telling you something without telling you.
Less than 2 minutes left. Craig asked Mike, would Denzel Mims fit the Saints scheme at 24? And if so, could they trade into round 2 to get a linebacker?
Denzel would fit in what they do. He's a big, thickly built receiver. He actually came to a pitch and catch camp I was at, and he had just decided he was going to Baylor. He's a big 6'2" guy. Now he can flat out run. He needs a little bit of work as a route runner, but boy, can he get up in the air? And I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical receiver. Use that big body better. Now the Baylor had like different sections of plans for him, so he was secluded into doing that part, and that's just what he's taught. But I think he's a late first-round pick type guy, thickly built, and he can flat-out fly. If you go in round 2, I think Logan Wilson, the linebacker from Wyoming, would be somebody to keep an eye on. I really like him, really good athlete, and he can play all 3 linebacker positions.
Chris McGinnis has the honors of the last question. Ask Mike, where do you see Thad Moss going?
I think Thad's a middle-round pick, and I'll never forget watching an ESPN show. They were interviewing Andy Reid, and he tells Randy Moss, listen.
Oh, Mike, that was after the Super Bowl. That was on the stage after the Super Bowl.
He says, listen, I'm after your son. What bigger recommendation that? Now, he would fit what Andy does.
Yeah.
Because they use that flex tight end a lot. I think that's a perfect spot for him. I look at him going in the 4th round.
He's on Twitter at Mike Detillier. Mike, I know it's a busy day. I can't thank you enough for always making a couple of minutes on draft day, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Really enjoyed it.